Good afternoon. We will call the first trim hearing to order at this time. And even though we are in the afternoon, I still want to do the pledge. So Mr. Onks, if you could start us with the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Juvenile Welfare Board's first of two public hearings for the consideration and the adoption of the FY26 millage rate and budget. The public hearing is being held in accordance with Chapter 200 of the Florida statutes. So we have two action items. I will ask Robbie Stivers to proceed with the proposed FY26 tentative millage rate portion of his presentation.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Good afternoon, everybody. The first item that you see before you, and these two items, by the way, are combined, as you can see, items 2A and B. And here's the narrative piece of that. Bree, if you will scroll up. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we're into the presentation. Next slide, please. We're down to September the 8th, which is today. This is the first trim budget hearing. And for over a decade, JWB has kept the millage rate constant. And as you can see there, the 0.8981, and that was for several years. And then in 2022, the millage rate went up slightly. And then the last 2 years, the millage rate has stayed at the 0.8250. So a little bit of narrative down there. The maintenance of that over the last couple of years has been reactionary to our budgetary times. And certainly this year particularly, as we'll talk about later in the slide presentation, was the stance of going forward of maintaining that millage rate in order to fund not only our existing strategic plan, but our capital initiatives too that are in the budget. The board's been very focused on our fund balance and keeping our fund balance today's dollars working for today's children. And as you can see, the solid blue there, that's the ad valorem of $115.5 million. That's the revenue that JWB will take in. And then the $32 million there in the middle column, or middle part of that column, is for the board policy compliance, and that's keeping and maintaining our reserves. This is a forecasted figure. We're forecasting between now and next year. So we feel like that with lapse and other considerations within this budget, we'll have about $6 million there. That revenue always has a tendency to be reapplied for other initiatives, so be mindful of that as we go forward. Also, I want to point out the trajectory as this board has directed to decrease our lapse, keeping today's dollars working for today's children. And as you can see, we'll keep an eye on it as we go forward. That's really important to us, especially in these economic times, to make sure that we're not accumulating money and keeping the money out in the community and keeping it working. Any questions? Next slide, please. Here's the lapse history. As you can see, we're here. We've dropped down over the years as this board's directed. In 26, we're hoping to be around 10%. This year, we're hoping to land somewhere around 8, little more than 8%, it appears. This is a moving target. We'll have more firm numbers between now and the end of the fiscal year. Probably in our October board meeting, we'll have some actuals there to actually show you how we landed our lapse figures. Be aware that lapse is something that is created largely by vacant positions our agencies may have, or changes in their budget scenario as they go forward and where they weren't able to do the things that they needed to do, and therefore they have excess funds left over. JWB as an organization also will experience some lapse due to the same reasons. But we keep an eye on that and we budgeted for that. We budget to use it throughout the year. The tentative millage rate, as we talked about for the property valuation, this is for the whole county, about $141 billion. That's a whole lot of money. Proposed tentative millage rate for JWB requires a majority vote. Equal to the millage rate The same millage rate for FY '25 and '24 are equal at the 0.8250. The rollback rate is 0.7918. The difference percentage in that is about a little over 4% difference. The millage rate of 0.8250 yields an ad valorem revenue of roughly $115 million to JWB, and that's about a $3.1 million increase from last year. The primary use of tax revenues, we'll break them down as follows. So if you'll notice, the 3.1 million, and that's the increase in the millage rate, the actual dollar increase. But at the bottom, it's important to note that the 3.8 million of that also helps us balance our budget in that there's been program reductions that the board's approved in the last couple of board meetings that reduce that. So we're using, in conjunction with the 3.1 and increased revenues, we're also using that $3.8 million. 2.6 of that will go to the request for applications. This is one-time capital expenditures that we'll do a competitive process on. Gives agencies an opportunity to apply for capital funds to help them improve their facility. 1.9 million is cost of living adjustments. This is for the agencies to have cost of living adjustments for their staff, not only with their staff, but also with their programs too, because there'll be inflationary pressures there. JWB as an organization, it's not noted on here, but just for your information, the COLA for JWB and its employees for increases there of 3% is about $210,000. 1.6 million is for the expansion and enhancement of continuation of programs. Almost $500,000 is for new and expanded programs. As you all know, we're getting ready to embark on a new strategic plan. This next year we'll be finishing the extended strategic plan. I think we extended it a year, and we budgeted about $487,000 to do that. Any questions?
Madam Chair? Robbie, thanks again for all the great work over the year, and appreciate it. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but two things that popped into my little brain as you were speaking that I would be interested in before the next meeting is the percentage of ad valorem dollars that we're taking in that we actually provide to providers, and then the percentage of ad valorem dollars we're taking in that are actually directly providing services. So I know like FSI may not go to providers, you know, providers may be having administrative cost COLAs. So providers, which would be inclusive of supporting their admin and COLAs and things like that, because obviously we know we need to have salaries as high as we can have them to avoid rollover and lapse and services not being provided, and then direct services. And if you need to estimate, I can understand that that might not be the easiest thing to figure out over our very diverse spending, you know, that we do here. So I would be interested in those figures. If you
Absolutely, glad to do that.
I don't have any cards, so if there is any public comment, now is your time.
Madam Chair. Is my understanding, Robbie, and again, the lapse, really pleased with how that's been, you know, I think right-sized. We're not intending to spend down lapse going forward? Is that the goal? Like we're not allocating lapse to services at this point, is that right?
Yes and no, and I'll answer the yes first. Sometimes when there's lapse that we see that's available throughout the year, then we come back to this body and we're able to reapply those dollars. We're also budgeting to offset lapse that we have historically gotten over the years, but as you can see, that trend is getting less and less and less. So two yeses on that question. The no, we are continuing to watch lapse and to also be sure that we're keeping those dollars working and keep an eye on it.
Right.
Inflationary pressures and all those things can change that scenario for sure.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Does any other board member have any more comments and or questions for Mr. Stivers? Does any member of the board recommend any changes to the tentative millage rate? Okay. The board must now consider the resolution to set the tentative millage rate. I will ask Ms. McCurry to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY26 tentative millage rate.
A resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative levying of ad valorem tax for the Pinellas County for the fiscal year 2026, providing for effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 8th, 2025, adopts a fiscal year tentative millage rate following a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. And whereas the gross taxable value for operating purposes not exempt from taxation with Pinellas County has been certified by the county property appraiser to the Juvenile Welfare Board as $140,742,873,554. Now therefore, be it resolute by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, that 1, FY26 operating millage rate is 0.825 mils, which is greater than the rollback rate of 0.7918 mils by 4.19%. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
May I have a motion and a second to adopt the FY26 millage rate resolution? No, I have to call Miss Olivia, I'm sorry.
We need a motion and a second.
Okay.
Call the roll call. So we have a motion by Ms. Rutland.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I will now ask Ms. Bell to call on each board member for their vote.
The Honorable Patrice Moore, Board Chair.
Yes.
Division Chief Jim Milliken, Vice Chair.
Yes.
The Honorable Bruce Bartlett, Secretary.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Oggs Jr.
Yes.
Ms. Renee Chia.
Yes.
Ms. Kristen Nage.
Yes.
Superintendent Kevin Hendrick.
Yes.
The Honorable Chris Latvala.
Yes.
Ms. Alicia McShay.
Yes.
The Honorable Sarah Mallow.
Yes.
Ms. Melissa Rutland.
Yes.
I will ask Robbie Stivers to proceed with the proposed FY26 tentative budget portion of his presentation.
Thank you, Judge Moore. This item before you is adopting the FY26 tentative budget. And changes since the board meeting on July 24th, $810,000 in fund balance. This is the revenue section of that. Has decreased by another $810,000. That's largely the spend down of lapse. $104,000 property tax revenue. This was where we needed to move some funds in order to pay the commissions for the ad valorem revenues to be collected by Pinellas County. We were about $104,000 short. We will continue to budget this and refine our scenarios on that. And then finally, our interest expense is down by almost $50,000. Our interest income is down by almost $50,000. This is resulting that we have less fund balance in order to invest. So that makes sense. For a difference in revenue of $964,000 since July. Expenditures, $269,000 administration expenditures. The decrease is due to the removal of the Chief Communications Officer position. Also adjustments to employee benefit elections. So the expenditures are less than what we had budgeted by about $270,000. $40,000 for program continuation. Program support departments, this decrease is due to adjustments made to employee benefits of $40,000. And then almost $67,000 is to move money from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26 to cover a capital project that was approved by the board earlier this year actually, to move forward, and they've had some permitting problems, so the project has been delayed, and they've asked for the ability to carry those funds over until next year. The net amount of expenditures that have changed since last July's board meeting is $243,000. Any questions on that? Tentative budget revenue. This is the revenue side that we're looking at. As we've talked about, it's the millage rate of the 0.8250. Will generate ad valorem revenues of roughly $111 million. This is calculated at 96%. And it's a little bit different from last year. Last year we calculated that and budgeted for 97% of that number. And the reason being is the collection rate for the county. It's going down some. We will continue to monitor that. We considered talking about 95%. We think 96% is more representative, but we'll see what next year holds. Certainly the impacts of the hurricanes, as we're told, may have an impact on that. So we'll keep an eye on the collection rate and the success of the county of collecting those funds. Interest expense, as you can see, interest income, as you see, is increasing by about $17,000, and contributions remain flat at roughly $40,000. So that gives us total sources of revenue of $114 million. Difference from last year of about $3.1 million. This is the expense side. For FY26, the proposed budget for, as you can see, program continuation, almost $112,000. That's where the bulk of the spend occurs. Program COLAs for the programs is almost $2 million, 1.925. We've had program reductions, as I've mentioned, of the 3.8 that the board approved previously in the year. And then the capital RFA, RFA for capital and technologies is $2.5 million, and that's a decrease from last year of about $1.5 million. The new and expanded programs, $487,000 for a total in expenditures this year, a little over $113 million. That's down by about $3.5 million compared to last year. As the spend, as we talked about, for children and family services, that's where the bulk of our budget is spent, and $112 million, almost $112.5 million there. And it breaks it out by program as well. And then the tentative budget for administrative expenditures or JWB expenditures. This is what we do in-house in order to operate the Juvenile Welfare Board. Total FTEs have decreased by 2.5 positions. The half position is a part-time position. Total salaries and benefits that we have is a little over $9.5 million. That's where the bulk of their spend is. That's an increase of almost $4,500 relative to last year. Operating dollars down by about $240,000 for a total of almost $12 million in administrative spend. That's down $235,000 from last year. The board policy has a target that we follow to keep our expenses relative, our administrative expenses relative to total expenses less than 10%. As you can see, we're at 7.62, so we're well within that target that the board calls for. Any questions there? Tentative budget for non-administrative expenses. These are expenses that aren't directly related to salaries, benefits, and the standard operation. The statutory fees, these are the fees that largely we pay to the county in order to collect our ad valorem taxes. This is the adjustment that the board will be considering in the board meeting later this month of the $104,000. The budget for next year is roughly $2.4 million. Last year it was roughly $2.3 million. This is a variable figure. It's largely based on whatever the ad valorem rate is. It's largely based on the collection rate for the county. That's a difference of about $112,000 versus last year. And then internal technology. These are licenses that we pay in order to run our database, to run our systems, our IT systems, et cetera. We spend $918,000 there. Performance measurement is another budgeted expense that we have. And this helps us gauge and evaluate outcomes for not only the programs, but also some of the initiatives that JWB has. So the non-administrative expenditures in total are about $3.4 million. Changes in fund balance. As you can see, fund balance, the beginning fund balance, we're projecting of about $42 million. the assigned cash flow reserve and the assigned unforeseen expenses. Both of those are required by board policy, and that's where the bulk of it is. For an ending fund balance, we're projecting for next year of about almost $28 million. That's a decrease of about a little over $14 million relative to last year, and total difference is about $7.4 million between this year and last year. Any questions on that? That concludes my presentation, Judge Moore.
We're at the public comment portion. Do we have any public comments at this time?
I have no cards.
Are there any questions from the board members at this time? Hearing none, the board must now consider the resolution to set forth the tentative budget. I will ask Ms. McCurrick to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY26 tentative budget.
A resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 8, 2025, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065, and whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, set forth the appropriations and revenue estimates for the budget for fiscal year 2026 in the amount of $156,202,603. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County that 1, the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget be adopted. 2, the resolution shall take effective immediately upon adoption.
May I have a motion and a second to adopt the FY26 tentative budget resolution? So moved. Second, do I have a second? Thank you. I will ask Ms. Bell to do a roll call of each board member at this time.
The Honorable Patrice Moore, Board Chair.
Yes.
Division Chief Jim Milliken, Vice Chair.
Yes.
The Honorable Bruce Bartlett, Secretary.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Auks Jr.
Yes.
Ms. Renee Chia.
Yes.
Ms. Kristen Nage.
Yes.
Superintendent Kevin Hendrick.
Yes.
The Honorable Chris Latvala.
Yes.
Miss Alicia McShay.
Yes.
The Honorable Sarah Mallow.
Yes.
Miss Melissa Rutland.
That, unless the board members have any further comments, this will conclude our first public hearing for the FY26 millage and budget. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Now we are called to order our special board meeting. We have one action item by Mr. McCurrick.
Thank you, Judge. We have an action item, which I believe you've all seen, to approve the budget amendment to transfer lapsed funds from the Family Services Initiative Family Service Pool and purchase waiver to contract with Feeding Tampa Bay. This came to our attention through Feeding Tampa Bay that there are approximately 14 schools in Pinellas County who need to fill their pantries for the students to have snacks during this period of time. We had conversations with both the school system and with Feeding Tampa Bay to better understand the need. The approximate value of that is $250,000. We propose that we provide those funds out of lapsed funds from the FSI program to support the feeding of children in their within the school system for these 14 schools and their pantries. Either Karen or Robbie, would you like to add any more to that?
I think you did it really well. Thank you.
Questions?
I had a question. About the way that the motion was worded. It just says that the funds were to go to Feeding Tampa Bay, and it doesn't say anything about this program. So do we have contractually, it's going to the schools?
Yes, we do. We have would you like to?
It's contractually, it's going to Feeding Tampa Bay, but as part of the contract, the pantries are located at the schools themselves.
No, but I mean, in the contract, will we be specifying that these funds are to go to that program at the schools?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
Ms.
we-
Rutland, I've seen the contract, and just to assure you that it's written that there's up to $250K, there's a list of the 14 schools, and there's an exhibit of what type of shelf-stable food our money will be used to buy.
Got it.
And then they will be delivering as needed to those sites only.
So I would be more comfortable voting on this if the motion was more specific than just because the motion currently says that it just goes to Feeding Tampa Bay.
That's fine, and you can just amend the motion to say Feeding Tampa Bay to deliver shelf-stable food to the 14 sites as set forth in the memo.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Ms. Chia?
What caused the shortfall? Why do they not have the ability to put food on these shelves as they have done in the past?
As we understand, it was due to a few, I think, culminating factors. One being lower money being raised, also inflation of costs of food that, impacts their purchasing ability to purchase.
Okay. So we found out about this because Feeding Tampa Bay came to JWB,
Correct. Feeding Tampa Bay reached out to us. We reached out to the school system as well to have this conversation before taking any action.
Have you had any conversation with Feeding Tampa Bay? And maybe this is probably beyond the scope of what you would discuss, but they are expanding services into a number of different areas that are essentially social determinants of health build-out, which for those of you that don't know what that is, in healthcare, it is a policy position that anything that might impact a person's health care is considered a social determinant of health and therefore should be covered by healthcare dollars. In this case, it would be Feeding Tampa Bay or government dollars. And on their website, one of the expansions that they want to do they want policies that increase the access to nutritious food and funding for school meal programs and expand access to affordable housing, childcare, and living wages. Throughout the rest of their website, they talk about a lot of other things that they would like to provide from their program perspective, right? So my concern is that by giving them $250,000, we're actually funding the expansion of that effort, even though, we say, oh no, the money's contractually just going to the food in those banks. I want to really understand what's driving their decision-making, where are they spending the rest of their money so that they cannot provide this to the existing program. Does that make sense? That's my concern.
Yes and no, but let me see if I can answer your question.
Okay.
This discussion was very specific about these 14 schools. Very specific about the fact that they are sitting in Pinellas County and that the children in the Pinellas County school system, unfortunately due to lack of funding, would not be able to have these snacks and other foods there. We did not talk about their expansion on their policies or procedures in those parts. What we really focused in on was clearly on feeding the children of our community. And so that's the direction we have taken. We haven't gotten directly with them or worked with them on their policies. At this point, that wasn't really part of what we're attempting to try to do here. I understand what you're saying, and we will have conversations so we do things with them in the future, but this is very specific to feeding children of Pinellas County.
Is there already funding in the school programs for free meals and food that's provided through the school program?
1 second. Yes, Superintendent.
Students who qualify, receive free and reduced lunch, qualify for that meal. Typically, these banks are for after-school meals, weekend meals, things like that. There are probably 5 or 6 different providers across the school district, Baycare, Feeding Tampa Bay being the largest ones. Very neighborhood specific. There's some small nonprofits that also do food banks. But there's no funding for food banks that anybody receives. All of the school lunch and breakfast programs are run through the federal government and have to run at cost. So there's no deficits that can be run. It's its own budget. These work on their own and are standalone programs. In terms of this request, I was made known of it in my official role through Karen and her contact with our folks who work on food pantries across the district.
Commissioner Latala?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the 14 schools that would be receiving the food, would they be identified as low income, and therefore the kids would be chronically hungry, especially on nights and weekends? So they would be the kids that would need this the most.
Yes, I'm sorry, I've just brought up the locations. So they are, for example, Boca Ciega High School, Eisenhower Elementary, Oak Grove Middle School, in Plum Elementary School.
Thank you.
Those, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
you don't
those-
have to read the list.
Those, for example.
I'm familiar with a few of those.
Also Campbell Park.
Thank you.
Do the after-school programs that we fund typically provide snacks or food within the scope of that program?
They try to. Again, I think, with this situation happening in terms of access to food, I know we had some programs recently receive some cuts or changes to being able to provide snacks and stuff for after school. So again, programs like this and these pantries allow for kids to have access to that food after school and on weekends and times when school isn't open.
That's helpful. I still have concerns that I have already discussed.
Understandable.
That this could have, be a compliance issue with, the legislature's directives.
I will tell you as well, many of the teachers actually, as well as my daughter being a guidance counselor in one of the schools, not one of these, but other schools. Unfortunately, due to the fact of the lack of funds, they're actually taking out of their own pockets funding to help children or provide children with after-school snacks and the like.
Yeah.
So it's not it's an unfortunate position about funding, but it's also a need for the children of this community. And I think it's extremely important that we focus on feeding those children and giving them an opportunity to be fed during this period of time. We can address those other issues, which we agree would need to as time goes on. But at this particular case, I believe it's very important to provide access to snacks and food after school for these kids as they move, onto the evening, onto the day, and get prepared for the next day and be ready to learn some more.
$250,000 is just a lot of money. So they requested that sum, and so my follow-up question would be, what kind of analysis was done to see where that money's gonna go, how far it can go?
They submitted.
Why the need? Yeah.
They submitted to us reports of how many families and children they served the previous year, as well as how much food was distributed. So that it was based off of those numbers. And what we know in our community right now is that families are stretched more than ever in terms of being able to afford, both with inflation and other reasons, food. And so we based our numbers off of what was previously being utilized.
Is Feeding Tampa Bay the only entity that does these food banks at the schools, or are there other entities also involved in stocking these particular pantries? Right.
Yeah, Baycare has pantries, St. Pete Free Clinic, Orlando Health, Advent Health, and then there's several nonprofits. So they all receive those foods from different places. Feeding Tampa Bay just happens to be one. There's a whole web of them. Baycare is probably the largest.
Are any of those entities that JWB has an agreement with also?
Yes.
Yes.
St. Pete Free Clinic, we have an agreement with as well.
But they also.
And I guess my understanding is that Feeding Tampa Bay was specific to those 14 locations.
Exactly.
And St. Pete Free Clinic has other locations.
That's exactly right. Each one of these organizations have different schools that they support. In this particular case, it's what Feeding Tampa Bay supports.
Commissioner Latveller?
I'd like to move approval on budget amendment to transfer lapse funds from the Family Services Initiative, Family Services Pool and Purchasing Waiver to contract with Feeding Tampa Bay in accordance with the 14 schools that was mentioned.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Saramola.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
With that being said, the majority does win at this time. Do we have any public comments? Or at this point, unless there's anything else, meeting will be adjourned.